Austin Tech Connect is the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. Founded in 1992, ATC exists to help unite the local technology ecosystem and to encourage the spread of community, collaboration, and conversations in Central Texas. This podcast is sponsored by SailPoint. They are a leading provider of identity security for the modern enterprise, empowering organizations worldwide to put identity security at the core of their business. With a foundation of artificial intelligence and machine learning, SailPoint Identity Security delivers the right access to the right identities and resources at the right time. Now, here is this week's episode.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Austin Tech Connect. This is the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. My name is Tom Singer, and I work at the Austin Technology Council, and I've been there for about a year and a half, and I was hired to sort of reinvent the organization to work on leading it into the next decade. The Austin Technology Council is a 32-year-old organization that was founded to help put technology on the map as the future economic driver of Austin and to bring the startups and the established companies in software and technology together. And the world is different 30 years later. So we're trying to find our way. We're working very hard with all the other organizations in Austin that help serve the growth of our tech industry. In fact, we are a community group first and a membership group second. Our idea is that Austin Technology Council should be a thread that touches and supports everything in tech. And every now and then we can pull on that thread and bring the community together when we have a need. And that's what we're trying to do. So please make sure that you're subscribed to our newsletter. And if you work for a tech company, make sure that your company is a member of ATC. So every single week on this podcast, I try to bring really interesting local leaders who are doing cool things so that we can hear their story of success and we can learn from them and get advice on how we can all thrive. And today I'm excited about this interview because we've been talking about it for like 4 months. And I am bringing to the show Cherie Werner. Hey, Cherie, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. But for those of you who don't know Cherie, she heads FIESTA. And what FIESTA stands for is Founders, Investors, Entrepreneurs, Startups, Techies, and Austin Newcomers. And they meet every single month on the third Tuesday. And it's sort of like, gosh, I would call it the Ellis Island of Austin, because if you're a new techie to town, sometimes it can be hard to find your place, find where to go, what organizations you should be looking at. She brings everybody together. Some startups get to pitch, but really it's about building community and letting people have that launching pad where they can find where they belong in our crazy but exciting Austin tech ecosystem. She really, really is about community building, which means I think she's awesome because I'm all about community building. She's been here 34 years, which means she's actually lived in Austin longer than I have by 6 months. And I don't meet a lot of people who've been here longer than I am. So that's exciting too. She grew up kind of all over the place, mainly Louisiana, but she has called Austin home for over 3 decades. And we're going to talk a lot about where Austin has been and where it's coming. So Cherie, give me a little bit of your business background, right? You grew up kind of all over and things like that, but what's your career been like?
Well, I actually met my husband in Louisiana in college, where I studied marketing and business. And then we moved up to Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, where I worked for about 4 or 5 years until I had my first child. I always thought I would have a career even after having kids. However, something called hormones kicked in. And when that little one came into the world and I held her, I just wanted to be a mom. And so I chose that path of being a mom and raising my kiddos. And I think that I learned a lot because women, moms, they do a lot of different things, and we moved to Austin when my second child was born because the Virginia, D.C. area, it was too expensive to live on one income. So Jon got hired at IBM and we came down here and fell in love with Austin. I was born in Texas, so I've always wanted to come back.
Well, it's really interesting. I want to jump in because you talk about the fact that, hey, my career, I made the decision, or you made the decision to be a mom. That's actually a career. And I think sometimes in our society, we don't champion the fact that what a full-time stay-at-home mom actually does. It's actually a lot more work than jobs. A lot of people don't know this about me, but when my oldest was born 27 years ago, my wife, when we were dating, dating, you get to know somebody. On like our third or fourth date, I said, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And she was very clear that if she had children, if she got married and if she had children, she wanted to focus on raising the children at least most of the time. And that was cool. I had 3 older brothers. One had a full-time working wife. One had a full-time stay-at-home mom wife. I'd seen both worlds. Both worked really well. And I was like, hey, that's great. My wife got promoted while she was on maternity leave to the job she had always wanted in the national company that she worked for. And
Wow.
it was one of those opportunities that was going to be really hard to say no. It would have done a lot for her career-wise and just personally. And she came to me and said, I didn't love the job I was in. She said, would you think about quitting your job for 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, that's your dream, not mine. And a couple of days later, I went in and I said, was that not being supportive? And she goes, no. She goes, I think that we each have to fulfill our dream. I said, well, let's revisit this. And 2 weeks later, I quit my job and was a stay-at-home dad for 2 years. And I tell everybody that it's the hardest job that I ever had when it came to just overwhelm and what I had to do. Now, that being said, my daughter Jackie is 27 and we have a fantastic relationship, probably more so than if we hadn't had those 2 years. But I get mad when people kind of downplay the importance of that role. So I've gone on a big diatribe about this, but good for you.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't change it for anything. And I love the fact that you were supportive. I mean, one thing that a lot of people probably would know about Jon and I is that we've done premarital counseling, and we encourage couples to have those conversations ahead of time versus waiting until you get to that point. So I love the fact that y'all had those conversations ahead of time and were able to support one another.
So your kids grew up, and then what?
Well, so a lot of times people ask how I got into starting FIESTA, and one of the things that I realized is that even while the girls were younger, I had started a community group because at the time I was homeschooling them. And when we were here in Texas, I really wanted to find or create a group. So I think a lot of times groups are created out of necessity and need. And I didn't see anything here in Austin because I started homeschooling in California because we lived in California for 3 years. And I created a group for homeschool families, and we had close to 70 families that were part of that group. And we did everything from PE co-ops to parents, getting together. And I think I ran that for like about 5 years until I got pregnant with my third child, because there's a 10-year gap. So between the youngest and the middle child, I have 10 years. And so I have a really unique perspective on parenting because I have that decade of pre-iPhone versus raising a child in the iPhone era.
It's funny. One thing I love about interviewing is that you find things about people you've known for a long time. So I'm the surprise child in my family. My parents had a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old. My mom was 41. My dad was 52. And I mean, they thought they were done. I think my mom was planning European vacations for the rest of her life. And surprise, they had to start all over. But in my parents' case, they were pretty religious. My mom believed that this was the daughter they had always prayed for. And they got another boy. So I was that child. So my parents got to raise in 2 different generations as well.
Yeah. It gives you a unique perspective. And I think that that's why I just really connect so well with this younger generation is my youngest has kept me very young and relevant.
So let's talk about FIESTA, because I think it's a great organization. You've been doing great stuff for a couple of years. When did you start it? What gave you the idea?
Yeah. So what gave me the idea was during COVID. I'll back up a little bit. We started a family business together. It was Jon and my 2 older daughters called KOYA. And it was all about, helping to address the loneliness epidemic. It was a tool to help families and friends stay more meaningfully connected. And I mean, we had 2 big things that happened. COVID was one, and then the notification of location that really hurt the app. And we just recently kind of put that aside. But during that time, I was on Lunch Club and talking to, I think I had like 200 calls because, I mean, like there was nothing worse than being, in your home during COVID, not being able to go out for an extrovert like myself. And so I was always doing these calls. It was a way to talk about KOYA. It was a way to meet interesting individuals. And I kept hearing the same story over and over. individuals were moving here to Austin. They could go anywhere, but they were choosing Austin. Many of them had never even been to Austin. They didn't know anybody. And I was fascinated by that, number one. And then the other part of it was the fact that of those moving here, they were startup founders. And I know, being a startup founder can be very lonely because Jon is an innovator, and he has worked for several startups and has had two that he has done himself. And I, as a spouse, have been part of that journey, those highs and lows. And so I'm very capable of empathizing with individuals who are on that journey. And so we would invite people into our home, like, hey, come over for dinner. You're new to Austin. And I love welcoming people to my city. And I think that sometimes those first encounters make all the difference. So that's how FIESTA got started. As soon as the quarantine ended and we could go out and do group events, I reached out to everybody that I had met on Lunch Club that had moved here and invited them to Easy Tiger. And we had over 75 show up. And someone said, we should do this regularly. And like, I've done this before. I can do it once a month, easy peasy. And so that's kind of how it started. And that was in June of 2021. In July, we decided that we would be very consistent, meeting on the third Tuesday. I think that helps with, the word of mouth spreading organically. And we kept meeting at Capitol Factory. They gave us their space to utilize. And then I kind of came up with the name FIESTA. And I think, when people hear FIESTA, they think fun, party. But then when we give them the acronym, they're like, wow, that's brilliant. And so, yeah, that was our beginning.
That's awesome. No, I love it. And every time I think about the acronym and what it stands for, I think that's very clever. So clearly you studied marketing in college, because that's a very clever thing, because it sparks fun, but it also has a lot of meaning to it. So now that you've been doing FIESTA for almost 3 years and you draw hundreds of people, I mean, it's a great event, but it does cater to a younger crowd, and it does cater to a lot of newcomers. I mean, I'm older and I'm an old timer in Austin, so there's some, but what are some of the things that you found about people who are moving to town? One of the things I love is you ask people, I don't know if you do this every time, but at many of the events, you ask people, how many people have been here less than 6 months, less than 3 months, less than a month, about a week?
Yeah.
And there's always somebody who makes it to the event who moved to Austin 4 days earlier. So what are some of the things, some of the threads I will sort of run through this crowd that's coming to Austin?
Well, so I'm always fascinated. I think one of the things that fascinates me, because typically we have anywhere from 200 to 300. So you were at our last event on Tuesday. We had FIESTA. It was the third Tuesday, and we checked in 282. So one of the things that we're doing is we do know the demographics of the individuals coming, and that is so that we can help make better connections on their behalf. And so we have about 70% of those individuals that are coming are startup founders. And they're kind of all over the gamut, anywhere from B2B to CPG it is kind of all over, like I said. And one of the things that I realized also is when we first started off, I mean, the hands were always, so many individuals were new to Austin. So I also kind of viewed FIESTA as the welcoming committee. Mm-hmm. You're new to Austin. We want to welcome you. We're a place to land, but we're not holding on to individuals. We want those individuals to find their tribes, because as a founder, as an individual, everybody's on a unique journey. And I want them to know all these different incredible organizations that are out there in the ecosystem. So if you're CPG, I'm going to be directing you to the CPG events, and I'm going to introduce you to Mark Nathan.
Yeah, if you're CPG and you don't know Mark Nathan, you need to know Mark Nathan, right?
Exactly. And in technology, I mean, there's awesome women in tech. There's you. I mean, so it's about the founder or the individual finding what's going to help them, and even to the point of authenticity. I mean, where are you from? I mean, there's a group of folks from Ukraine that have gathered together and they meet. So there's something about meeting people that are in the similar, stage of life or ecosystem, in this ecosystem. So bringing them together is really important to me. But you can always come back home.
Right. Well, one of the things I really like, and you have this thought, the people at Austin Women in Technology have this thought. Some of the groups, not all of the groups in town, have this idea that we're not the center of everything. We don't own everything, and we can't be everything for everybody. And so it's, how do we work together? And I love the fact that you're like, oh, if you're in this set, you need to know Austin Women in Technology. If you're in this set, you need to know these people. Like the Austin Technology Council, we're not a startup organization, right? We're the thread that runs through tech, and we have a lot of tech startups. So we want those people. It's super inexpensive for a tech startup to be part of our group, but that's not our focus. Our focus is sort of the established growth-oriented companies, because, that's the future of Austin is those companies that are now out of that startup stage and growing, because some of them will become the next Indeed, the next Dell, and things like that. But so many people make the mistake, because our name is the Austin Technology Council, that they think that, oh, we're all about startups. And it's like, no, we have a lot of groups, Capital Factory, others who serve that community. And that's not our slice. And I don't believe, and this is sort of my take in running this organization, that, you said, like, we don't try to hold on to these people. So many groups try to think like, oh, I want all their membership dues. I want all their sponsorship. I only want them to come to my events. And I don't think that serves a greater community. And so that's one of the things I've loved about you, is you actually talk to the people who come to your organization about finding their home, because there's not going to be a single home for everyone in our tech ecosystem and beyond.
Yeah. And we're not membership based. So, I mean, when I started FIESTA, it was literally to just kind of welcome people and get together on a monthly basis. It is snowballed, into this massive, meeting group, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it sustainable and where we want to go with it. But my guiding question is how can I better help founders? And my focus is earlier stage founders. I mean, these are those founders that are just kind of getting started, bootstrapping, pre-seed, seed. That's the majority of what we have. I think by the time they get to Series A and beyond, I mean, they're nose down focused on growing their company. And I mean, that's where other organizations are going to be more valuable to them. But again, like I said, you can always come back to what we're doing, because when we meet, and that's what's important. I think to date, we've had over 7,000 attendees come through our various events, because I not only do the FIESTA on the third Tuesday, we started doing one-off events where we collaborate with other ecosystem builders. We did a Austin Women in VC and FIESTA founders holiday extravaganza last year. We did a Galentine with Artemis Fund. So I'm always looking to partner with other individuals, because I feel like you can do a better event. And it also helps with sharing the sponsorship dollars, which I think is super important.
Well, and I mean, we could talk about this forever, because I just really believe that is healthy for our whole ecosystem if the groups work together. The Austin Technology Council, we've worked really closely with the Chamber and with Austin Venture Association, and I've pretty much put it out there that any nonprofit, any group that is trying to serve, who wants to really collaborate, but there's some people who collaboration is, we'll take it all, we'll just put your name on it. That's not collaboration. The groups that really want to collaborate, we want to be that. We want to be supportive. I put other people's things in my newsletter. I've put your stuff in my newsletter from time to time, and really try to let people know what events are going on. So that's one of the things, I think. Do you see more collaboration amongst the Austin tech scene, or do we still have to work on that?
I mean, there's always room for improvement. I think sometimes you have to look at the organization. I think something that a lot of people don't realize about FIESTA is that it's literally just myself and Jon kind of doing this. And that it's a lot of work for two individuals. And so sometimes it might seem maybe like we're not as collaborative because we don't move as quickly. It's just a matter of like, how do I implement this? How can I make this happen? But literally the heart is to come alongside and work with other individuals. I know we've been talking back and forth for a long time. It's just like, how do I bridge that gap?
Yep.
You know, I need more input from you on bridging, you know, what collaboration would look like.
Right. Well, and I have the same problem because I'm a one-man show for the time being. So, you know, I'll be hiring a staff member in a couple of months to help with that, you know, ability to do those types of things. But it is hard when it's just you trying to run an organization and trying to make sure these events are good. But it is one of those things that I think that when organizations can sit down and talk about how do we do win-win events, the community is the winner.
And I like that because that's what I always look for is how to do win-win events. And, you know, I like to bring people in because, you know, it's easier when a bunch of us are carrying the load, you know, versus just one organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, but yeah, I just hired my first VA and it is kind of offloading some stuff, but it's taking time because the other thing too is that I'm a little bit older than most of these individuals running meetup organizations.
You and me both.
Yeah, but I probably have a lot more energy. I mean, people are like, man, I see you everywhere. And, you know, I think at our events, when you're doing an event, it's hard to connect with individuals. So you come across sometimes is like unfriendly but it's not that you're unfriendly, you're focused on the event. So going out to other events is how I'm able to connect and find out what people are doing and how can I help you and what connections can I make on your behalf. And so I spend a lot of time doing that because I really want to be of service. And that's the heart behind everything that we're doing. But at the events, you've got a job to do.
Well, for what it's worth, I've never heard anybody say you're nothing but friendly. So I don't think anybody ever thinks you're not friendly. So what is sort of the dream of FIESTA? Where would you like to see it in our ecosystem in 5 years?
Wow. Okay. Money not an obstacle.
Right.
I would love to have another like accelerated co-working space, you know, and have my own venue where I could do events and allow other people to come in and host events. But just doing events by themselves, I don't think is enough to move the needle to truly help founders. And so providing, you know, resources. I mean, if you go out to fiesta.community, you'll see that one of the heart behind what we did was we wanted to provide resources that were easily accessible, that weren't, you know, kept behind a particular entity. And I felt like things weren't transparent enough here for founders, and especially if you were just starting off. So, I mean, and where I saw that was like with Austin Business, they put out a guide of all like the top 15 accelerators. It's not 15. I mean, like there's over 40 accelerators here in Austin, and everybody should be elevated because it's about the founder finding what they need.
Right.
And so that's really, I would love to spend more time building out these resources that are open for people to find what they need when they need it.
Yeah, I agree that I think we need to be more inclusive and have more guideposts to how do you go from an idea to being a startup to getting some, you know, angel funding, to getting some venture funding, to actually getting momentum without having to be in a curated group.
Right. I mean, it has to be an option that is available. So, because again, like I said, everybody's on a different journey, but for them to understand it, and I think oftentimes what drives me crazy is I meet a lot of young entrepreneurs, and they're all like, you know, how can I help you? And it's like, I need an introduction to a VC, and I'm like, you know, it's like, wait,
not yet.
Build a business and, you know, get traction and things like that before you get to that point. Right. So,
absolutely.
Anyway.
So I want to shift gears a little bit and let's talk about the Austin tech scene. What do you think we're doing right? And where do you think maybe as a community, we need to up our game?
What are we doing right? I mean, there's so many new people moving into the Austin area, because Austin has become like the Silicon Valley of the South. And there's a lot of opportunities. And I think what we're doing right is that we really have open arms. I think Austin is a very open, welcoming, friendly place. And I think what we need to be doing better, as we were just talking about, is I think a lot of people, if you move to other cities, you have like the city as a whole is where you find information, and so I think making these resources and things accessible so that founders are able to navigate, and that's the hole that I've been trying to fill in providing some of the resources. So our calendar, for example, is for whatever reason has become like the go-to calendar. And I don't have by any stretch of the imagination all the events on there, but my events are more focused on where founders can go and where some good networking events are. And then I also I want to do a shout out for the event organizers, the various individuals that stepped up to start a group to facilitate something for whether it's AI focused or whatever. I mean, I think event organizers are really the unsung heroes, because it's something that they do from the goodness of their heart to provide this community that will help accelerate, what they're focused on, whether it's AI, CPG, whatever.
Well, and I agree with you that I think that, bringing people together in person really does. That's where the serendipity happens. That's where the magic happens. But in our society, and partially in Austin, I see it, we sort of have this, what I call rationalized isolation, because, coming out of the pandemic, so many people are like, I don't want to go to a breakfast. I don't want to go in the middle of the day to a lunch. I don't want to go to a happy hour. And they can rationalize why any of those are too hard to get away from the house. Where it used to be, you could do a 3 name tag day pretty easily, because you'd go to the office on your way. You could go to some sort of a networking breakfast, lunch close by. There was some sort of a networking lunch. And then on your way home, you would hit, whatever the tech happy hour was. And now people sort of rationalize not going. And I don't think we should go to 3 a day. That's probably more than the average person can handle. But I think that we have to be thinking about why are events important. And sometimes, especially for some of those more established people, sometimes you got to show up in the community. If you want to be a leader, sometimes you have to show up amongst, the masses and not just hang out with each other. I think more of our established entrepreneurs and our established leaders need to come to things like FIESTA or the Austin Technology Council or the Chamber, because I think that inspires the community if those people are present. And that's how Austin was built. I mean, these people were all part of everything. And I think we need to get back to that.
No, I agree. John and I went up there was an event called for the west side of Austin, all the way up 2222 by 620. And we, I like to, before I put things on my calendar, visit the group and see is it indeed, founder friendly and stuff like that. Because I have gone to 1 or 2 events that were for entrepreneurs, and it's like, not quite sure this is the right fit, But yes, being out there ourselves is super important. And it's nice. I love that you come to FIESTA, and I tell people I can't explain what FIESTA is and what we're doing. And with anybody that I work with, sponsors or partners, I want them to experience FIESTA before we make an agreement. Because I think that's important. And one of the things you asked is what we're doing well, like the larger community organizers such as yourself and myself and YJ and Leslie, we're meeting on a monthly basis, and we're trying to sync calendars so that we're not overlapping and competing with each other on doing events on the same day, because that makes it difficult for the founders to, where do I go? You can't be at 2 places at one time.
Well, one of the things I did when I took over HEC is I moved our, 15 or 20 year Gateway Happy Hour, which is before South by, and it's sort of a local event. Before that, it took place for over a decade on the Thursday before South by, but nobody ever seemed to notice that Thursday night became a very busy night. There's 25 or 30 different events that you could go to on that night, where it used to be that the only thing on Thursday night was the ATC local gateway party. So I moved it back to Tuesday. And when I did that last year, people were like, what? You can't do that. And then we had nearly 300 people at the event, and everybody was like, what a smart idea to move it to Tuesday. Because if you're overlapping, then people either have to choose or they're doing drop-in networking, which is never good for the organization or the person.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And I'm signed up and ready to go. And, if you haven't bought your ticket, you should go out and get it, because I know last year, I believe y'all sold out of tickets.
Yeah, we sold out about 3 days before the event. And I'm tracking, while we're recording this, I'm tracking ahead of schedule for that event. So hopefully we'll sell it out and have a line of people at the door like we did last year. So, go ahead.
South by Southwest is a great time, I think, for organizations to collaborate too. Because there's so many things going on. And if you're doing events like coming together, I think is super beneficial for the founders to meet two organizations at one time.
Absolutely. And there's so many things for local people and, of course, for the international crowd going on in Austin over the several weeks that lead up to and encompass South by Southwest. So before I let you go, I ask everybody this question. My motto, my sort of belief, and it's sort of bled into the Austin Technology Council, is that community, collaboration, and conversations, I think, can solve all problems. Which of those words resonates the most with you and why?
Oh my gosh. I mean, community and collaboration, I think, go hand in hand. I mean, as you're building community, I think it's important to have collaboration with those in the ecosystem, because, I think that that's how FIESTA has grown, is that as I've been building this community, quasi-community, I call it, I've been getting to know the different players in the ecosystem, and I'm always coming to them with, how can I help? How can we work together? And I think because of that, I've created a lot of goodwill. I think one of the greatest honors that I've gotten, because as you know, being a community leader can be a very thankless job. And I love it when people do stop and give hey, thank you for doing this. I mean, that does make a big difference. But I was nominated for the Div Inc. Champion of Change in the Space Maker category. And I was super surprised by that and very honored. But that is voted on by peers, that nomination. And I think that comes from the collaboration that I have, done with this ecosystem.
Nice. Well, and congratulations for that. Very well earned. So,
thank you.
Last question. If somebody was coming to visit Austin, maybe somebody you grew up with in Louisiana, you haven't seen them in 20 years, their first time in Austin, where would you take them to show them the vibe of our city?
Oh my gosh.
I don't prep people. I never prep people with that question. They have to be a regular listener to know.
Great question. The first thing that pops if they're outdoorsy, I love Town Lake. I love walking Town Lake. And I think just being downtown and hopping into different places is, really fun. But then if you go out 2222, where the bridge and that area is, it's nice and hilly. I remember when Jon came to visit Austin and we were living in Virginia, he called me and said, oh my gosh, there's these mountains. I'm like, there's no mountains in Texas, but it was hills, because we came to Austin when we were finished. We were looking at graduate school, and we drove in from Louisiana. It was flat and dry and really nothing. And so that was my impression of Austin. But when he came to interview for IBM, they took him on a tour and took him down 360
out to the lakes and stuff like that. Yeah, sure.
And he's like, it was absolutely gorgeous. And so that's what sold him on wanting to move here.
Nice. Well, I am going to call you out. You're showing our age of 33 and 34 years living in Austin when you said Town Lake, because of course because 18 years ago or something, they changed it to Lady Bird Lake, but I still call it Town Lake always.
I will too. So, that's what it is to me.
Yeah. Nothing against Lady Bird. She did amazing things for this community, but it's once Town Lake, always Town Lake in my vocabulary. So I laughed when you said it. I thought I do the same thing. So Cherie, thank you so much for being here on Austin Tech Connect. Any final words?
No, thanks for having me. Thank you for what you're doing in the ecosystem. Congratulations on this new season that y'all are going into. And I look forward to watching the growth of your community and membership. So
awesome. Well, again, thank you for being here. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. You know what? We do this show for you so that you know what's out there, who's out there, what's happening in Austin. That's why we call it Austin Tech Connect. So also, if your company's not a member, talk to your leadership. Let's get them involved. We're looking for new board members from tech companies. We're looking for people who can help us come up with ideas for the events that these growth-oriented companies need and want in the community. ATC is going back to our roots. We're going back to being a grassroots-driven organization, but we can't be a grassroots-driven organization unless the grassroots step up and give us guidance. And that's where you come in. So make sure that you've joined the Austin Technology Council today.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Tech Connect podcast. Make sure your company is a member of the Austin Technology Council and add your voice to the future of our tech ecosystem in Central Texas.